Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a very special town hall featuring our friends and many of yours, Tom and Betsy Brady. Many of you may already know me, especially if I've been doing my job well. My name is Jennifer Hall, and I serve as the Director of Development for the University of Toledo Foundation, where I have the honor of working very closely with the College of Engineering. It looks like we have a great number of participants with us today, which is not at all surprising. And there are even more continuing to join us. So as they get settled, I'll take this opportunity to share some quick housekeeping notes. You may be wondering why you can't see yourself or you can't see the names of the other participants. It's actually by design. So please rest assured that Tom and Betsy and Dean Toole and I can see each of your names. And you will, however, be able to see your own name and each of ours. You can also see a chat box. So if you don't see it already, please go to the bottom right-hand corner of your screen where you should be able to see a little chat icon. Once you click it, the chat panel will appear. And this is how you're going to be able to submit questions directly to Tom and Betsy and Dean Toole throughout today's town hall. And finally, if you want to change the view on your screen, just head up to the right-hand corner. It's over by the chat once the chat's open, and you'll see an option where you can expand or reduce your screen. All right, that's probably enough housekeeping. Let's switch gears and get things started. I'll begin by turning things over to the Dean of the College of Engineering, Mike Toole.
Thanks so much, Jen. This is our fourth, I think, we've done of these town halls. Thanks for kicking that idea off, Jennifer. I got to say, every time I do this, it's like a family reunion. So I click on participants and I'm like, yay, Burdell Jackson's here. I haven't, seen him, and the Lovejoys and John Hull, my friend, and Bill Kester. So it's like all these friends that are good. So it's great to know you're there, even if I can't see you or hear you. Thanks for joining us today. And I'm really excited about this one. We got a twofer, right? We've got Tom and Betsy Brady. Before we get into them and I introduce them, let me just share a couple bits of news about the university. You might know some, you might not know others. So first of all, we have continued at U Toledo and the College of Engineering, I think in particular, to do what we're supposed to do, right? We have a mission to provide Northwest Ohio and all of our nation with a talent, with our workforce, and to launch careers, right? It's all about students. And so we continue to do that well, despite this pandemic. We all know we're a year into this thing. It's still going strong here, folks. We have at U Toledo one of the highest percentage of face-to-face classes instruction, because students generally almost always prefer that. And yet we have one of the lowest positive rates for for COVID in the state among public universities. So we're doing it well, and I'm proud of that, and I appreciate all levels of the U Toledo administration, and particularly in the college, for the work they do, and the students to make it safe here. So feeling good about that. We are at this point are hoping next fall we'll be back to normal, meaning more almost all face-to-face. But we'll have to wait to see the guidelines from the CDC, from the governor, et cetera. But right now I'm positive about it. One thing that's really got me positive, forget about the pandemic, is our new president. So the trustees, kind of surprised maybe some of us, but shouldn't have been a surprise. They named Dr. Postal from interim president to permanent president. And he did that without a search, which some people say, hey, what's up with that? I could tell you what, I believe special circumstances demand special processes. I can tell you that I and the other deans of the colleges here have been so impressed. He's had an immediate impact on so many areas, and we were just pleased as anything that he's now our permanent president. So we're just, U Toledo is rising once again, and so I'm very excited about that. Little sad news just to share, and many of you already know it. Longtime benefactor, supporter, inspiring leader in the community, Norm Nitschke, passed away last month. Norm, I believe, was just shy of his 101st birthday, as I recall. And I'm sitting here in Nitschke Hall, right in the office, the dean's office. Next to us is Nitschke Auditorium, which is a vibrant center, gathering place on campus. Next to that is the Nitschke Technology Commercialization Center. So what Norm and his wife before that had done together here on campus is phenomenal. what he's done in the Toledo region, phenomenal also, and in the world of technology. So wanted to pass on, that sad news. We're continuing to think and pray with the Nitschke family. Very pleased, Toledo is a community, and particularly the College of Engineering. My predecessor, Dr. Nagi Naganathan, president now of Oregon Institute of Technology, was asked to be one of the very few non-family friends to travel back, and he did, from Oregon to attend a very small service. So just to remind you all, we're a tight community here. And so it's, as much as I rue the, sad loss of Norm, very proud of the community that unites us. And that brings us to today, because there's some other very important people who have also done phenomenal things, really internationally, to commercialize new technology. We're going to hear about that, but also done phenomenal things for our University of Toledo and for our Toledo region, all in Northwest Ohio. So, when I asked Tom and Betsy Brady, and Jennifer Hall said, "Oh, they're going to be great." When I asked them, they said, "Hey, but this is not about us. This is about, Toledo. This is about Northwest Ohio. This is what we can do together." But they agreed to share their story and their perspectives, their challenges, their laughters, etc., because it's about strengthening our community. So you're going to hear more about that today. So I'm very proud of it. So Tom and Betsy, thanks so much. I'm going to keep talking a little bit just to introduce you. Let's start with the personal stuff, because I think that's important. First of all, Tom, born and raised in Maumee, multi-sport athlete, captain of the football team. He has got a BS and an MS in engineering from Dartmouth, which he reminds me all the time. Not that he rubs it in too much. Great school, but he's always looking, and this is what Tom does. He looks at what other good, successful organizations are doing and say, let's make it happen here in Toledo, which is a great sign of a visionary leader. He went on to earn a PhD, a doctorate in material science and engineering at the school up the road, University of Michigan. Great program. But he's not just, certainly not geeky. Everybody knows he's not geeky, right? He's a great piano player, and I've enjoyed listening to him so much at the Toledo Club. On Friday nights, he'll be sitting there playing. He also is a gearhead. He takes classical cars, sometimes not so classical, and restores them. And I don't know how many he got. Maybe he'll tell us how many he's got. I'm pretty sure there's a dozen or more, and he keeps trying to sell me one or two. And I'm like, my wife's not going to let that. But anyway, we'll talk about that. You may see Tom driving one of his classic cars in the homecoming parade. Betsy, also born and raised in Toledo, right? High school valedictorian at Ottawa Hills High School. She went to another unique, elite university, Smith College, which is a small private university in Massachusetts, as I recall. Great, wonderful, one of the seven sisters. She is, of course, everybody knows Betsy because she has been involved in so much in our community, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But when she does find a little time, she relaxes through being outside and gardening. But for both of them, of course, family is so important. They have 3 grown children. They have 12, and they will say amazing grandchildren, ages 2 through 20. I know they doesn't seem like they should have a 20-year-old grandchildren, but they do. Betsy hangs out with them, plays lots of games, active stuff, none of this video things, she said. Tom he's a phenomenal woodworker. So he takes them out, and he's taken his shop where he does woodworking and makes some special Christmas gifts each year. But he's also turned part of it into a maker space. So he's got some of the grandkids doing that as well. And he sent me some pictures of that. So that's the personal side, and I've loved it. And there's more to find out. Maybe people will contribute by chat with some other secrets that they know about the Brady's many breadth of interest. Let me just tell you about some business things, their accomplishments as well. Many of you know that Tom started out as a vice president of plastics technology for Owens-Illinois, and he led the development of the first PET plastic soft container and directed the technical activities of OI's plastic product lines. And then OI made a big mistake, and they let Tom go because he went and founded PTI. And PTI has got over 200 employees in it, 6 different startups. You'll hear some of those today, including Phoenix Technology, which is one of the largest merchant producers of food-grade recycled PET. Freeform Technologies, a manufacturer of specialty packaging. PTI Europe, headquartered in Switzerland. And then another one is Guardian Medical USA, a manufacturer of medical devices. So Tom's founded a lot of those. He started it. Betsy is absolutely helpfully carry. So they will make it very clear they are a great team. They have been married 52 years, and part of what they do is they have complementary skills and interests. And so Tom's always, we were having an analogy, Tom's always going out on that limb to start something exciting, and Betsy's grabbed a hold of him or make sure that he doesn't take the tree down if that limb breaks. So Betsy very much has played a big role, vice president, secretary, treasurer for PTI and those other companies that I talked about. She's been the one responsible for the execution, right? So things like strategic planning, banking, insurance, legal review, HR, corporate structure, shareholder relations, and financial management. So key part of it, and they've just been a great business team for so long. So that's the business side. We'll talk about their nonprofits, but let me just share a little bit, because when people heard we're going to be talking about the Bradys, some people said, I'd like to share something. So Robin Whitney, who's a senior leader with ProMedica, our last VIP guest, she sent in this quote. I've had the honor of getting to know the Bradys over the past several years. Our first connection was, of course, through the University of Toledo. Anyone who's been involved with U Toledo's College of Engineering has been a witness to their impact and involvement at UT. But then, once I got to know them, I saw them involved in other parts of the community. Betsy was on our ProMedica Board of Trustees and led her organization through some very exciting times. And Tom, well, he continues to impact so many parts of our community. His leadership on efforts such as universal pre-K for all children in Toledo has been inspiring. The Bradys care about our community and demonstrate it in big ways and small ways, but they never cease to find ways to improve our community. I'm proud to know them. So I thought that was a nice quote to get us started a little bit. So let me start now, Tom and Betsy, if I may, about your connections to U Toledo. And so Tom has been, your service has included past member of the Board of Trustees at the Medical College of Ohio, right, the former, past member of the Board of Trustees for the overall university, past interim dean for 2 years at the College of Education, which is a heck of a story in itself, and I can tell you that, or Tom can, and have been a member of many advisory boards in the College of Engineering and others. Betsy, your service has served on the UT Foundation Board for 10 years, you've been on the Incubation Board for 4 years, and you've done a lot of other things. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. I just want to ask you all, thinking about that, how did you first connect with U Toledo? And why did you do it? They're not one elite alma mater, and yet you've done so much for us. So tell us about your origins, and then also why you keep doing it. Tom, can we start with you?
Well, it goes all the way back, interestingly. My grandfather, and I used to go visit him when I was 7, 8 years old. He actually was a professor in the College of Education and founded what we called, at that time, the College of Secondary Education. And I used to come over and he would take me to UT and let me play basketball in the old field house with a dirt floor, by the way, in the morning. And then he'd take me up to his office in the afternoon and I would read his books, not mine. And just as a trailer for that story, of course, when I became dean, the faculty will admit that they were horrified that a PhD in engineering would be the dean of education. I'm happy to say that all turned out to be a good situation for both of us. But I remember telling them, kind of jokingly, I was in this college way before you were. Betsy.
Okay. I guess I grew up not very far away from the university, and my family were involved in a lot of things in the community, and were always supporters of the university and how important it was. So I think I kind of grew up with it. But I was thinking from the standpoint of, when you're a kid, you don't appreciate those things. You really aren't paying much attention to it. It's just sort of there in your background. So for me, thinking about it is always the people that have pulled us in, and there have been a lot of people over time at the university who have gotten us connected in various things. And I think particularly, where we became really significantly involved, it was Dean Nagy.
Yeah.
Predecessor who was here for so long, and just in such quiet, humble ways, he was just always thinking about, what should we be doing, as Tom said, listening to, or you had mentioned, Tom's always throwing out the big ideas. And the fact he was always receptive, we had an awful lot of breakfasts over time, sort of thinking about how could you do some of these things. And we found the same thing with some of the other colleges. Certainly, Mike, we got to know, just really as friends almost when you first came to town here, connected with the engineering, but just going more broadly in terms of all our interests, yours and Amy's, and others that we were connected with. So, I think it has just sort of spread organically from sometimes small beginnings, but we've become increasingly involved so that we've been engaged in virtually every part of the university in one way or another, which is pretty cool.
And
the role the university should play.
And I'm reminded, by the way, as Betsy speaks of Nagy, when we were first thinking about a large donation to the engineering college, and he asked us about it, I related to him my first engineering course at Dartmouth, which was a freshman entrepreneurship course. And you know what Nagy did? Nagy created the freshman entrepreneurship program at the College of Engineering, which is one of the places where we've supported it. So he really was a listener.
He was, and I'm reminded, speaking of Nagy, so I'm sitting here in the corner office, as you know, on the 5th floor. 2 offices over, or 2 rooms over, is the Nagy Nakanathan conference room, which, as I recall, you two played a key role in getting that conference named when he left, which is neat. So, and by the way, we are building. Everybody should know, friends of the college, we're really building on the entrepreneurship initiative that the Bradys started. We have recently partnered with Keen, which is the Kern Family Engineering Entrepreneurship Module. And it's not just about startups, right? Because all our employers want to hire our grads. So it's really about innovation or entrepreneurial-minded learning. And Associate Dean Matt Franchetti is doing a great job working with Dr. Norm Rapino to launch this. And so thank you for the seeds you've planted. We continue to rely on that support, but we're moving forward with it. In fact, I'll just say very quickly, I met with the Lieutenant Colonel Pepin yesterday. We're going to develop some entrepreneurial-minded learning modules for our ROTC cadets because, hey, they need innovation too. So anyway, it's just neat how things build off it. So thank you for the seeds you planted. Let me transfer now a little bit, look a little broader. Let's think outside Toledo, because you are so much part of our community. So Betsy, you have been an active volunteer your whole life. You've served as chairman of the board of many organizations, including Toledo Museum of Art, a world-class institution right here in our backyard, the Chamber of Commerce, Toledo Community Foundation, Corporation for Effective Government, Junior League of Toledo. You've been on boards at ProMedica, Metro Parks, another world-class organization right here in our backyard, right? They won #1, I think, grand prize in the U.S. last year. Toledo School of Arts, Lourdes University, and others. Tom, you're a current trustee at Lourdes University. You're a chair of the governance board for Toledo Early College. You're a member of the RGP, Regional Growth Partnership. Past member of the Toledo Public Schools Business Advisory Board, past member of Third Frontier, Toledo School of Arts, Arts Technology, and Toledo Symphony Boards. So you all are all in, and some people might say you're all over, okay? And so that's a neat thing. But you've told me about that. When you talk about, I said, why do you do it? How do you do it? You said, you know what? What's neat is it's not random what you're involved in. It's not fragmented. There's a synergy to what you all do. Tell me more what you mean. Tell us all, if you would, what you mean by all these different things you're doing and how they all kind of come together, actually. I'm going to start with Betsy.
Okay. Yeah, and let me say a couple of things, and one that sort of the analogy came to me from listening to one of your previous speakers, Irma, the founder of the Bitwise, which is now coming to Toledo. You think about how things come full circle. You're really totally amazing. I would encourage everybody who's listening, if you have not listened to that recording, it is available and it is phenomenal. But I guess the idea that one thing leads to another. You don't always know where those connections are going to be, but as you get involved in one organization and then you start connecting with both the other people there, both staff, the other board members, other leaders, other volunteers, something else comes as sort of a side path in many ways, or that you're talking about, and there's common interest, and all of a sudden there's something that develops from that. And so you sort of spread out. And I guess my experience has been, Tom's experience has been, the fact that you're engaged in the sort of multitude of things. In some ways, it seems like that would be divisive or spreading your energy maybe too much and not being effective. But I think we found the reverse. It enables that you can see where those connections could and should be, and being in a place where you can pull those together because you have the relationships. Having worked with people and knowing what they're passionate about and knowing how they think. It's the beauty of being involved with any of these organizations. We're blessed here because we have so many I think really incredible community institutions and community leadership. But it just sort of keeps one thing leads to the next. It's not the, and I was mentioning Irma and the Bitwise piece. You don't know where those paths are going to be. She spoke about kind of the lily pad idea, where you sort of have an idea of the paths that you're on or things you're trying to accomplish, but something else sort of comes in, or Tom being out on a branch on the tree, that all of a sudden something appears, and there becomes a real possibility that you hadn't really even thought about before, but all of a sudden they make sense. All of a sudden they're part of that same ecosystem, and so those connections just start to happen, and there's a huge amount of energy that's created from that, and good impact. So I will pass that to Tom to kind of follow up. But
Tom,
just conceptually, philosophically thinking about, how does that happen, and why is it that you get involved in such a broad range of things? Because they really do all connect in sort of unseen, under the surface ways.
Very
well,
good.
I can't really add a lot to that, but what I would say, and actually I was having a conversation with Bethany as we started this, and I said this, having grown up here and lived here and worked here, makes a big difference. I lived in Chicago or Atlanta or New York. I wouldn't know the same people, wouldn't have the same history. And I'm reminded, and I reminded Bethany that I've got a T-shirt that we got with some of our old friends, and it says, "It takes a long time to make old friends." And I think that sort of says it. We know a lot of people because we've been here. And part of what we do is not do things, we connect people, as Betsy said. So, yeah.
So I kind of maybe answered this, but I'm going to answer one of the questions from the participants who sent us in ahead of time. And by the way, folks, by all means, enter your questions in the chat function. So just hit chat and enter the questions. We'll see them, and then we'll answer them, and we'll let them pile up a little bit. But I have some questions that people had sent ahead of time. One of them was, why do you feel it's important to give back to the community? And at what point in your lives or careers did philanthropy and community engagement emerge as important activities for each of you? So you kind of addressed it a little bit. We know it's been a long time, but anything you want to add based on those questions?
Well, maybe let me start there. I suppose, looking at both Betsy's and my background, parents' childhood, we both grew up in a place where thinking about other people and doing things for other people was important. But I can honestly say that my engagement in all of the activities in the community really took hold about the time that I started the company in 1985. And that's counterintuitive in a way, because that's when I had the least time and the least focus on other things. And yet it was the time that I think I began to really realize what an impact individuals and organizations could have on the community. So that's really when I got involved.
Okay, and I'll speak to it a little bit too. And I think some of this comes from, you don't always realize as you're growing up what you're absorbing, and it's really not yet who you've become, and get involved. And so I'm very aware of it. For me, it was at the stage as I had very young children, and I became involved through Junior League, which is an organization of women serving the community and volunteerism and leadership. And it exposed me to so much. I think that in many ways it was an outlet, and where I was very consumed with child rearing and or young children, and not too long after that with Tom starting the company. But it gave me something that was sort of my thing, and I was surrounded by other women who were very engaged in leading a lot of efforts and thinking about where are solutions to things that you could impact on. So I became involved in that, and it just took me on all kinds of paths that I wouldn't have known about otherwise. I'm very struck by one of the things that I think is huge for the University of Toledo. We've become good friends with Dr. Apple, who is Dean of the Honors College. And one of the pieces that she's been very focused on, has really brought, is a course in multicultural Toledo, recognizing that we're quite a diverse community and that it's really important for young people to learn about that and how to relate to and appreciate all of those strengths and differences, but then also community engagement and the idea of becoming engaged, whether it's, at whatever age. But I think for young people, having an opportunity somewhere along the line. I would say we're extraordinarily proud of the one I would speak to is our oldest grandchild, who is now in college, but while she was still in high school, she started a couple of different programs within the school, just seeing needs that were there, things students were struggling with, and helping pull things together to help address some of that. But just the experience of doing that, and for UT students, this is all in the Honors College leading the charge on that now, but the goal is eventually that should be part of every student's education, because it's so easy to become narrowly focused. For myself, I think I was so was a good student all the way through, and I sort of knew that was expected of me, and I was always driving hard. I needed to meet those expectations, so very focused on that piece of it, less aware of some of the other things. So sort of opening the mind very early in life, as early as you can, and finding the satisfaction that comes from that, in the way all of the very different sets of things that you learn beyond what you learn in a classroom.
Sure.
Both important.
Betsy, you just mentioned something. You were talking about referring to your kids and grandkids, and that segues nicely to one of the questions that the audience had. With all your business and civic commitments, how did you both manage to maintain that work-life balance that worked for your family? And clearly it did, because you're so darn tight to your 3 adult children and your grandchildren. How did you do that? What's your secrets there, or maybe not so secrets, for that work-life balance? We'll start with Betsy, then Tom.
Oh, wow. I guess I almost want to say, Mike, that it's almost an instinct and something you don't even quite realize. But the fact, I'm a big believer in life balance. And actually, I was involved in a program in Junior League very early on, as women were starting to re-enter the workforces, maybe in a very different way than they was at the stage where I was a young adult and having kids, and watching a lot of people sort of wrestling with that. And it was actually a national program that the Toledo got to be a pilot in. So I became very thoughtful about that, and sort of the appreciation, and really thinking consciously about how do all these things build each other. They in a way, they're all time consumers, but in fact they are also energy builders and bring something different. Each piece of them, whether it's, the family and raising children, teaches you a lot about working with people and patience and different approaches to, and the fact that things change constantly on you. Just when you think you've got something understood, you're into a different stage. And that's sort of true in life. So to me, I think it's sort of the fact that those things all overlap over each other, and it's not all, there are times when it's messy, and times when you're too pulled one way or the other, and you need to be, and you've got to go with that. But always sort of coming back to the center, that you've got multiple components of life that are all important, and you want it, and it's actually very healthy for children. It's healthy for a business to be very community oriented. It's helpful to businesses that you also have all these other orientations. So it's just an interweaving that in some ways, just as you think about it, you have to sometimes step back and say, I'm too heavy on one side, got to pull back a different direction. But they're all good for each other in so many ways. Good.
Some wise words there. Tom, how about you? Work-life balance.
So, I have a simple answer. It's the first priority. We all take care of our priorities. And if you don't make it a priority, it won't become a priority. However, I will also say that in the case of Betsy and me, it goes back to partnership again. When I was starting the company, I remember I had 3 kids that were 6, 9, and 13 at the time. And I was coaching 7 days a week during the summer. And I remember occasionally I had to travel like 40% of the time, right? And I would ask some of the other parents if they would help out, and they were always too busy. So who helped out? Betsy. Betsy stepped in to coach. So it really
Knowing anything about it.
is kind of making it a priority and using your partnership. So
Very good. I'm looking at a couple questions that come in. I'll get to them in a second. Some good questions here. Let me read, if I may. I don't think I've done this yet. Read the quote from Adam Levine, right? Executive Director from the Toledo Museum of Art, who is a big fan of yours, as many of us are. And Adam just sent in, quote, Betsy and Tom Brady believe passionately that people go farther together. Whether connecting people or organizations, the Bradys have an uncanny ability to help community organizations forge partnerships that make our entire region better. And I think that fits with the synergy that you talked about, and I guess that work-life balance. Let me actually read one more quote, otherwise I'll forget. Randy Ostra, that people know, CEO of ProMedica, a world-class healthcare organization in our area. Betsy and Tom Brady have long been role models for community involvement, philanthropic support, and leadership. I have personally been inspired by how selflessly they share their time, talents, and money to support a wide variety of organizations and causes throughout our community. They truly are an inspiration to many of us as they masterfully demonstrate how families can leverage the opportunities afforded to them to make a difference and change lives for the better. So I know you didn't know those quotes were coming, but people sent that in. So I thought that was neat. So if I may, before again, one more question that was sent in ahead of time. Some folks said two questions, I guess. Maybe I'll do the first one. What's kept you in Northwest Ohio, right? Because you've been elsewhere in other parts of the country, and yet you've stayed committed to Northwest Ohio and here. So what haven't you mentioned already about it? Tom, what's your thoughts? Why Northwest Ohio special to you and sunk your roots here and haven't left other than college?
You know, I suppose some of it is circumstantial, but I can tell a story because when I graduated from the University of Michigan, I got a great offer from Western Electric, which was in Princeton, New Jersey, and I actually accepted it. But there was a young manager from Owens-Illinois that came to recruit at Michigan, and he convinced me that we were going to do some really cool new things, which I could spend a whole hour talking about at Owens-Illinois, and got me excited about it. Now, of course, it didn't hurt that we had both our families here, but that wasn't initially the driving force. It was really about what I thought I could accomplish here. And of course, once we got here, you know, the rest history, right? I mean, it's I could have started a company anywhere in the country. Why do it here? This is a great place to start a company.
Great. Betsy, anything to add about Northwest Ohio?
I guess what I would say is we've loved it here. I feel like we have thrived. Our families have thrived here. We've had every opportunity we could ever want. And honestly, again, it goes back to the people, the people we've just been blessed to know, that we've been inspired by as we have, you know, matured through our lives and our careers. It's just been a really, really good, satisfying, happy place to be. We've really never seriously thought about going somewhere else, or even as we're, you know, moving more towards retirement, we're really not interested in leaving and being somewhere else because we like to be part of it. And I think we have incredible momentum going in the city today, and excitement and energy, and, you know, a terrific leadership group, both in the profit, not-for-profit communities. It's going to be an exciting place to be.
Yeah, I agree. If I could just share my perspectives as an outsider. Remember, I came to U Toledo and the Toledo region just about 3.5 years ago, and I was struck. I want to use the word almost a meat and potatoes. I hope that's not a bad way. Salt and, you know, pepper. It's just the salt of the earth type thing. The community organizations here, in some ways, are stuck 20 or 30 years ago, and that's a really good thing. You look at people still bowl here. There's still a ton of technical societies. There's still the honor guard marching proudly at so many of our institutions and our events. And people who are not from Toledo may take that for granted, but I can tell you we're really strong here. I happen to like a New York Times columnist named David Brooks, who some people like him and some don't, but he talks a lot about kind of the social fabric and the communities that bind us together, despite all these things that may be divisive in our nation. And Toledo has all these things. So I agree with you totally. And I'm so happy you've planted roots here, and I'm happy to be here now as well myself. Let me jump, if I may, to one of the questions that came in from one of our participants today. It says, Tom and Betsy, thank you for your time and support of Toledo Engineering and your many years of experience. Where do you see the needs are for future engineers? You've supported entrepreneurship programs. Do you see further combinations of degrees, maybe with electrical engineering, industrial engineering, becoming more attractive to incoming students and engineering manufacturing companies? Tom, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, let me sort of give you an answer to that doesn't directly answer the question, but relates to it. In fact, I think I just sent you and others one of the things that's going on at Dartmouth. And that is that, we, in today's world, engineering and technology are a liberal art. We used to think that the liberal arts were something different than technology, but in today's world, I think everybody needs to have a good understanding of technology and engineering to some extent. One of the things that's happening at Dartmouth is that all of the undergraduates are now taking 1 to 2 years of engineering courses, because it is part of fundamentally what our society is all about. So I think one of the things that has to happen is not just that, but broadening our education to include technology and engineering as part of the standard fare.
Great. Betsy, anything to add?
Not really, although I guess I think the interdisciplinary approaches to things are
Right.
just critical, that most things aren't single, siloed issues that you're dealing with. There are a lot of ramifications, insights, really important to be well-rounded, to be pulling thoughts from
Yeah.
disciplines and other experiences related to any kind of problem solving.
Yeah.
Mike, let me add to that, because I think, again, one of the things that even goes back to when I was younger and starting a company, I think engineers today need to have an even better grasp on communication, both verbal and written, and they have to have a better understanding of things like marketing and sales. Our engineers, by the way, who are mostly UT graduates at PTI, they're not just engineers. They are salespeople. They are customer service people. And they need to be able to do all of those things. So it isn't about having a bunch of engineers over here. It's about having it all.
No, very good. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention almost every time we get together, which is a lot, which is great, wonderful, at the Toledo Club, on my deck or whatever, we talk about often the BA in engineering, which you've been pushing for. And remember, we had dinner talking with Charlene Gilbert, Dean Gilbert of the Arts and Letters, and Ray Whitty, Dean of Education. And we're still hoping to do it. And maybe that will come, because there's been, like Dartmouth, a whole bunch of other successful schools who've had these BAs in engineering. I think Smith has it as well. So I agree with you. We need, whether all citizens today need both the quantitative edge, but also need the breadth. And I think you two epitomize that. You're, Tom, you're an engineer with a liberal arts heart, I think. And Betsy, same thing. You may be liberal arts, but you've got the total phenomenal, strategic and quantitative skills too. So I think it's the Renaissance combination that we all need. Let me turn, if I may, to a couple questions about kind of on the technical side that you both can answer, related to plastics recycling. And we had a question sent in ahead of time that said, what do you foresee for the recycling of plastics in the future? How are we doing? Where can we improve? And I think related to that, Bill Kester wrote in, Tom, I know you've been involved in plastic recycling. Can you update us on your recycling activities? And do you have any knowledge of the Bright Mark recycling plant in Ashley, Indiana, my home county now? So tell us about recycling and plastics these days.
Boy, I'll tell you, giving you the Reader's Digest version to that answer is going to be tough. Let me start by saying that, plastics are not the problem. People are the problem. And if you think about it, in the world we live in with 7.5 billion people on this planet, predicted to be 11 billion in 2050, if we as a society don't figure out how to live in a circular economy, we're not going to have enough materials, forget plastics, to service us. So we have to begin to think about a circular economy. And frankly, people, while they complain about plastics or other kinds of throwaway things, they're not really involved. So I think one of the things, and happily, I think maybe some of this is even beginning to happen at the state and federal levels, we've got to mandate or incentivize or motivate people in one way or another. And frankly, there are some ways to do it. If you take the 10 deposit states, and there are only 10 after 30 years, 80% of the soft drink bottles come back, whereas in Ohio and the non-deposit states, it's 15 to 20%. So if you did nothing but put deposits on some of the things that we want to come back, we already have data that says that works. But I'm going to give your audience, they're younger than I am, the answer, and they can go do it. And here's where it is. If you think about the one thing that we go and spend money on and know we're not ever going to get anything back, it's a lottery ticket, right? And that may sound weird, but the reality is that the lottery mentality works, meaning people will do something knowing they're not going to get anything, but thinking they might win big. So we already have reverse vending machines, right? If we did nothing but take reverse vending machines and program one for straws and one for cups and one for PET bottles, one for polyethylene bottles, and oh, by the way, we programmed them like a slot machine, so that instead of a chit coming back for 5 cents, they get nothing. But oh, by the way, they might get paid off big someday. I guarantee you, every one of those plastic straws and things would come back. And oh, by the way, they would be already separated, they would be ground, and when they came to our recycling operation, instead of getting 60% PET back, we get 90% PET. And by the way, it would cost half as much to recycle. So if somebody would implement that kind of an incentive, I think we could solve the problem.
That is a great answer. I'm ready to invest. Tell me when you write that business plan. Betsy, any thoughts?
I want your engineers to go do that.
I think he's covered it.
Okay.
That's a regular
related to recycling, somebody wrote in about bioplastics. Is that truly sustainable or is it greenwashing? And can they be used in the medical industry?
Well, I don't want to be negative. And bioplastics, like anything, will find their place. But it is not a magic solution. And frankly, you can't convince yourself that it's more environmentally friendly if you actually add up everything from, what land did it take and water did it take and pesticides and all of these kind of things to grow plants. And oh, by the way, plant-based polymers are really just using new oil instead of old oil, right? And I think one of the challenges is that if you really think you want to bring stuff back and reuse it, whether it's plastics or other things, we need to make that system work. And I can tell you from having run a recycling operation, if we get a bunch of polylactic acid, PLA, and PHA and all of that stuff mixed into our PET when it comes back, all of a sudden that's not recyclable anymore. Mm-hmm. So you've ruined the system. Now, that's not to say that bioplastics don't have a place. And I think, like everything else, as research goes on, they will be part of the answer, but they're not a magic solution.
Okay. Betsy, any thoughts on bioplastics?
Again, I think that's really his area, but I
Sure.
would agree. I think it's simplified. It's simplified and probably very wrong to think that that's a complete answer. It sounds good, but there are so many more nuances to it, and positive and negatives that are both part of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, in some ways, it's more of a marketing thing at this point than doesn't. Maybe those problems will all be solved someday.
Sure.
So let me add something here that isn't a bioplastic answer, but people ought to know that there really are some creative things going on. If you go to the Netherlands and Australia, there are something like 60,000 miles of roads already made out of mixed plastics. And oh, by the way, they work better than concrete because they bend. And so there are ways to use a mixture of plastics, even if you want to recycle, for example, some of the things like PET and polyethylene and so forth. And there are some creative things going on. So some of the pressure, well, it is greenwashing and some of the pressure is politically motivated as opposed to environmentally motivated. I think, like a lot of things, just like diversity in today's world, we're finally beginning to really apply some good thinking and science to it. So I'm very hopeful.
Good. One of the things that you give me hope, both of you, when we talk, across the U.S., but particularly in the Midwest, the demographics is not helpful for our enrollment, right? So Toledo as a whole has decreased over the last 10 years, and it reflects the drop in high school population. And Tom particularly, but Betsy also, you said you keep ignoring Toledo, this great source of students in your backyard, the Toledo Public Schools, TPS. And you, it seems to me better than anybody I know, articulate the need to invest early on. Share some things that your thoughts on that, your values, and some of the things you've done in your leadership positions on some of those TPS related boards and other school boards. Tom?
Yeah, let me ask Betsy to kind of start off that question.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you should. So, we'll trade it back. Well, I guess, yeah, we have pretty strong conviction at this point that obviously there are generational issues and there is a divide in society between many of us. We're raised where we've had all the opportunities and we're blessed for that, but not everybody does. And so we have become very focused on those who are disadvantaged and how do you best break it? You have to, it's a multifaceted problem. I can tell you I am so inspired by Randy Ostra and Prometica. Robin Whitney has been very much part of that. Others who have really said these are serious issues, they're multifaceted. Again, we have so many leaders who are very oriented that way, but we have been heavily focused on both Toledo Public Schools and the youngest children, the preschool age. And I would also say with the program that we put together with the College of Education, really looking at what organizations work really well with these populations who are going to have more life challenges around them where they're coming from, but working with the Boys and Girls Club as part of the teacher training component. Work in a non-professional way, if you will, learning how to interact with, to appreciate the strengths of, to recognize what we all have to learn from people who have grown up in more challenged circumstances and yet are finding ways to raise themselves. So yeah, we've been very focused on those as being really important questions, and they have surfaced obviously nationally and internationally. A lot of focus. So we're proud of Toledo that there are a lot of efforts that they're going to be really important for us.
Great, thank you, Betsy.
Yeah. So let me just kind of add to that. And let me start at the other end of the scale. In Northwest Ohio, only 18% of the population has any kind of a post-secondary degree, and as life moves along here, people are going to need more training, not less, in order to participate in the economy. So one of the things actually I'm encouraging at Lourdes is how do you really look at, I mean, the high school population is going down, the uneducated adult population is going up. So how do you begin to think about that as opposed to a kid coming from high school and spending 4 years in college? By the way, if you've got kids, you can't come at 8:30 in the morning and be in a class every day. So how do we really begin to adjust the education system overall to accommodate, the next generation of students that may be more adult than child, number one. Number two, if you ask Romulus Durant, the superintendent of Toledo Public Schools, he will tell you that 80% of the kids that start Toledo Public Schools come in unprepared. And what does that mean? That means statistically that unprepared urban kid has less than a 1 in 2 chance of ever coming out the other end as an educated and contributing adult. So if you had to pick the one thing that we ought to be doing, we ought to be preparing kids for kindergarten. Maybe that's not conventional, traditional pre-K, but we ought to be preparing kids for kindergarten, because if we don't, we can't get them out the other end of the system. So one of the things that Betsy and I are passionate about and trying to help make happen is this universal pre-K thing. So you really have to look at the overall picture. And if I had to pick the one thing in this world that would change all of these social issues that we're having and business issues in terms of, wage gaps and so forth, I'd pick education. And that doesn't mean that everybody has to go to college, but we have to make sure that everybody has the ability to contribute and take responsibility in society. And then a lot of these inequalities will go away.
Very good. Good, wise words both. And I'd like to think we're making progress here. I guess when we talk about ProMedica's work on the social determinants of health, when we talk about the percentage, you said discouraging percentages about how many students emerge from the TPS pipeline and ready to go and succeed in engineering, it's challenging. And so Dr. Leslie Burhan, Associate Dean for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement, has played a key role. And one of the reasons I elevate her as a leader in our college is helping us to understand that the pathways that we need to get there, the special challenges that folks from diverse, but maybe under-resourced high schools face. That's why I enjoyed having Irma Oakland Jr. so much, because she was from the Valley of California. She told the story about how literally her and her dad collecting recyclable bottles for the deposit to get her here to Toledo. And, those are things that I frankly certainly never had. So it's really neat here at Toledo. We've got folks who are working hard to do the hand up and elevate the whole community. I've spoken to Vince DePaffy, CEO of SSOE, and you both know Vince well, again, about how we've all in our organizations are looking to become maybe more sustainable, have more inclusive excellence. And it's very exciting to me how Toledo can partner with organizations like that to help, we help each other. We help get them what we want. I would, if I may, just say one more thing that I was proud of last week. The question about advanced manufacturing, we are all in this together, folks, right? If our nation and our local economy is continue to be strong, if we're going to have strong world-class organizations like PTI and SSOE and Dana and OI, we need that partnership. And so last week, I'm not sure, Tom or Betsy, if you participated, we had a really neat conference, workshop with Oak Ridge National Lab, who's a really world-class leader in advanced manufacturing, among other things. Dana, Materian, a whole bunch of other folks, Ford, Honda, participated. Congresswoman Capter was played a role in her staff in getting it together, where we were all collaborating, talking about how to move forward, right? And it is the institutions, private industry, it's government, and it's the educational institutions that really need to move forward together. So again, I'll just say that's one of the things that I'm very proud. Toledo is getting ourselves on the hub in a number of different areas, from sustainability, inclusive excellence, and now I think advanced manufacturing. So I couldn't resist that little bit of a pitch for how excited we are. We've done the same thing on Technology Takes the Wheel on autonomous vehicles, right? Had a 10 series on that. So yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, let me compliment you on that. And add that one of the things, and again, I've worked with you and Dr. Alahenia already in the college. And one of the things that you and all universities need to do is to look at how do you provide the proper training and education, which may not be in a traditional way. For example, as opposed to having to go to college for 4 years to get a degree, what about certificates along the way? So that in fact, you can have a credential that you can contribute with. And oh, by the way, maybe that goes on for 8 years instead of 4 years. And what about competency-based education? So that instead of having to be there for 16 weeks, 8:30 in the morning every day, you can learn in a more customized way and get your credential in a way that fits your lifestyle. You know, I compliment UT and you and the engineering college in particular for really beginning to look seriously at that, because I will tell you, having lived in the world of education as a dean, educators don't want to do that. They want to keep it the same. So it takes some real leadership to kind of break away from that.
No, point well taken. We need innovation, right? Clayton Christensen is one who helped to point out that need for it. I would say we are working on the stackable credentials. We're working with Dana on automation or mechatronics stackable credential. We've got it now in cybersecurity. So we're trying to get there. But you and Betsy need to keep pushing, because that's how things move forward. We've just got about 4 more minutes, so I'm going to need to turn it over to Jen. Can I close with this? This is one of the questions that came in. Ask both of you, and we'll start with Betsy. Out of all your accomplishments, what are you most proud of over your career, whether that's in the business side, in the nonprofit, or whatever? So I'm going to limit you to about 1.5 minutes each, if I may.
Oh, okay, that's a tough one. And I guess it's maybe what I've sort of alluded to going through this. I think it's being sort of a positive support system, if you will, thinking through, always seeing where the possibilities are, and really appreciating the people and all the people who are builders. Those are the kinds of things that we've engaged in, that we've gravitated towards, that we feel very, very blessed to have been able to be a part of. The many different organizations, efforts, initiatives that are going on. So I think it certainly goes to our family and the pride that we feel in that. And as we watch our kids, the way that they are parenting, and as our grandkids and the value systems that they are growing up with, and their, what they are going to accomplish and contribute to the world. And I guess within our company, I feel really proud that I think we have built that kind of culture where people can excel and where they're excited about what they're doing. A lot of it comes from energy. Are you excited? Are you feeling supported? Are people helping to push you to the next level? And I think that's part of what I would speak for both of us. That's part of what we do and contribute. That maybe the most important thing is helping elevate others along the way, bring out the best and the possibilities of what are there. That's kind of a philosophical answer.
No, it's good. And
there are so many specifics along the way that could name that we're really proud about. But that's kind of the overarching piece of it, is feeling like having been a positive contributor to a lot of really good things and really good connections that have been made.
Very good.
So
Thank you, Betsy.
I'm going to tell you that I agree with all of that, but I'm going to give you one personal one. When Dr. Jacobs asked me to be the Dean of Engineering, everybody in the world, including Betsy, said, "Oh, don't even consider that." And of course, I went and did it. And of course, the faculty all, I think, would admit they hated the idea I was coming in there. But it all changed. And I am very close to that faculty today. And I think it was a good experience for both of us. But I will tell you that I have preached to my people and my kids for years that leadership is all about making others successful. And I will tell you, I had to live that philosophy there, because I didn't come in as the best dean that ever walked in. I didn't come in as an educator. I came in as somebody that had to make them successful. for us to be successful. And it works, by the way.
Very good. Well, I want to turn it over to our kicking off to Jen Hall. But before I do, let me just say I hope the audience agrees. It's been phenomenal just hearing from you and hearing affirmation of the wonderful people and leaders and supporters that you are. One thing I want to remind everybody is Tom and Betsy did not want this to be about them, right? It's really about the U-Toledo and the Northwest Ohio community and what we all can do together. And these are just two bright, shining examples. I know there's a whole bunch of other folks that, you know, could have been on this thing today telling similar stories. So to all of you in the audience, thank you for joining us, and thank you for the things you do, just like Tom and Betsy, to make this place better, because it's inspiring to me, and it's what we all need in our nation today. So I'll say, Tom and Betsy, thank you again. Jen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mike. Did you have one other quote that you wanted to share?
I think, did I read
share?
Randy Ostra's? I did. So I think I got all three in. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Okay, good. So as we close, I want to thank Tom and Betsy as well, two of our college's most passionate supporters, for not only sharing glimpses of their very full lives with us today, but for providing us with true inspiration. And of course, I would like to thank Dean Toole, who makes moderating look really easy. I think most of us know that it's not. And last but not least, I want to thank Randy Ostra, Robin Whitney, and Adam Levine, who were eager to share how the Bradys have touched their lives. And finally, a big thank you to each of you out there in our virtual audience for making it a point to join us at this town hall, honoring two of our colleges and, quite frankly, our university's most loyal and enthusiastic supporters. We sure hope that you will continue to join us for future town hall events. And if you have specific ideas on what you would like to see, feel free to reach out to me directly. My contact information is on the foundation website, and it will also be in the email that you will receive following this town hall. Thanks so much, everyone.